Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. My guest today is James Robson, a data protection officer and data sharing specialist working at the intersection of privacy, technology, and public trust. He and I spoke at Risk Europe in November 2025. In our chat, we explore what trust really means when it comes to data and how transparency, accountability, and ethical decision-making shape public confidence. We also discuss how AI, algorithms, and growing digital complexity are changing the risk landscape for every organization. James shares practical insights on the evolving role of the data protection officer and the mindset shift leaders need to make as data becomes a core part of everyday operational risk. If your organization relies on data, and let's face it, every organization does, this is a timely and thought-provoking discussion. I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
So James, thank you for joining me today here at Risk Europe.
Thank you. Privilege.
And you're a fellow speaker.
I certainly am. A little scared. A couple of minutes ago. Yeah.
You'll be fine.
Thank you.
This is a good warm-up for you.
Yeah, it is. Actually, I'm really glad I'm speaking so I can talk things out and get my voice up and all that kind of good stuff.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we'll start with something that you know a lot about. So
Okay.
You've worked in data protection, in research, in politics, latterly. What does trust mean in those sort of settings of data?
It's a difficult question. Trust means kind of having the social license to do what you need to do with data.
Right.
And so the public saying, yes, we allow you to do that. Now, in a political party, which is kind of my former employer, well, they don't necessarily realize that you have access to the electoral register and that it is written into law that you're allowed to do that.
Right.
And when there's kind of maybe a meandering of trust within the political sphere, then there's a lack of trust around use of data.
Yeah.
And every little thing that pops up, you're almost on the defensive because people aren't trusting how you're using their data.
Right.
So trust is, well, are you doing the right thing? Are you accountable to the right thing? Are you transparent about doing the right thing? And then do people buy into what is basically branding around how you're using their data in the right way and in a compliant manner?
Yeah. So I didn't know about the electoral roll stuff, so that's quite interesting. So You could sort of access, my data based on where I live and sort of you could market to me as a political party or?
Well, yeah, there is a consent mechanism within political marketing, but it's also written into law that every political party can send you at least one piece of postal information about their about what they're promoting, about their policies, which you received. And you may not be surprised how many people say that, you breached GDPR because you sent me this, how dare you? Whereas actually it's written into law that you can.
Yeah. And would that fall under the sort of, what's the wording? Interests, sort of, there's a word, isn't there, for it?
So you're probably talking legitimate interest. In fact, it doesn't. It's written into Section 8 of the Data Protection Act of 2018 for democratic engagement.
Okay.
And that aligns to the Article 6 for public interest or public task.
Right.
So political parties in that way for using voter data, electoral register data, is based on public task or public interest rather than legitimate interest.
Right.
And so you get a bit of a pass.
Yeah. Because legitimate interest is like if you're marketing, let's say you're selling second-hand cars to somebody who owns a car, that's probably legitimate interest, maybe. But in B2B, it's stronger, isn't it? So if you're selling window cleaning services to a facilities manager, well, that's a legitimate interest that you can market to them.
Yeah, you sort of can. I mean, consent has to be in there at some point, but I know the data and marketing agency, I think I might be getting the DMA anyway, kind of really put out a strong case for legitimate interest for marketing purposes and sharing information about companies. So but consent's probably a good way to go.
Yeah. So how do you sort of marry up trust on the one hand and what you actually need to do, and and then being transparent at the same time.
Yeah, so, in data protection, there's the privacy notices. That's meant to be the transparency mechanism. This is what we're going to do with the data, how we're going to do it, why we're going to do it, who we're going to share it with, here are your data subject rights, who you have to get in contact with, here's how you complain. Should all be there. Now, the realities of being within, I'd say most organizations, not just a political party, there's going to be nuances in there that you just can't really capture. And so it's difficult to get that level of kind of transparency and nuance in there. And I think nuance is a problem because you end up, even though it's meant to be written in a way that's easy to understand, writing in a way that may not be so completely easy to understand if you don't understand data protection or the GDPR a little bit.
Yeah.
And people find it boring. It's like, dare I say, tax, if I alienate all my tax fans, if I have any. But, it can be very dry and boring. So it's just there. I just click OK, consent to the cookies, whatever, won't read it. And then something might happen. I may get spammed with something and wonder, oh, I didn't want that. How did that happen?
Yeah.
And you don't realize you're in this massive sort of marketplace of who's going to show something on my Google feed that I didn't know I signed up to about 3 years ago.
Yeah. And social media nowadays is more and more sort of around those echo chambers of isn't it? It's not, you log onto Facebook now. You used to see all your friends, and now you're actually seeing sort of more political stuff or more opinion stuff, and it's kind of all driven by all this data, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So algorithms are the way of our world. And AI, I think, is really driving into that echo chamber model where you won't get that diversity of opinion that maybe you would through having face-to-face conversations. Maybe you would have done because you're like, oh, this little thing I didn't think I was interested in. I've seen a little blog and let me have a look at that. You won't even get that feed. You won't even see that. You'll just end up being kind of down a real nuanced rabbit hole, which has ended up also become our political spectrum. So lots of misinformation, disinformation, that gets people really riled up, changes the trust dynamics, and also moves the Overton window with how people are feeling about politics, and sort of undermines it all. And so you can't really believe much that you see in social media, and there are influencers that are paid influencers from both ends of the spectrum. And also you can't trust necessarily all broadcast media because they have to report on the prevailing wind. So it's very, very difficult to know what's real, what's true, what you should think, why you should think it. And we're back into that realms of, back in the past, all we had was maybe newspapers, many years ago, before TV.
And then TV,
that's all I had to go on. Now, all you've got to go on is who puts the bucks into the mass marketing campaigns and the messaging that gets into your brain. You go like, I formed my opinion. And the opinion may not be based on truth.
And even this week, as we're recording this, we've seen the resignation of the two senior people from the BBC, where you think, who can we trust, the BBC? And they've been shown that on that particular thing, they perhaps weren't as straightforward as they could have been.
With the big resignations, there's always further layers of that lasagna to unpack. And so what you see in those kinds of things are just that tip of the iceberg. It's easier to report that it's because of XYZ, the Trump, billion dollar lawsuit, whatever, all that kind of stuff. But there's going to be layers and layers and layers of other stuff underneath that we just won't know.
And how well are political parties, I mean, I know you work for one, but generally you probably have a knowledge of this. How well is the political world doing in this space of data privacy and transparency and trust? And is it seen as important? Is it sort of, are they, so like with AI, for example, I feel as if we're a little bit behind the curve in terms of how we're legislating for it. How are we doing in this area?
So, they've got some great people in Labour, and there is a policy at the moment, which is you have to go through a filtering mechanism to be able to use any layer of AI whatsoever. Absolutely categoric, do not, unless you go through this process. And I think that's the right approach right now, because the last thing you want to know is AI being connected up to the electoral register, the data harvesting, Cambridge Analytica, weirdness, which it just doesn't happen, believe it or not. but there's got to be a balance there.
Yeah.
And actually there needs to be that transparency built in yet again to build the trust, to go like, oh, okay, well, that's how the political sphere works. Are we getting it right? Well, is anyone getting it right? I don't know. There aren't big plans right now, but it's becoming more of okay, this sort of has to happen because that's where our future is.
Yeah.
If we're using it, then we'll understand it. There's a bit of that going on, but generally it's not yet. Be very, very careful.
Right. So if somebody was joining us, watching this video or listening to us in a business, are there any kind of key metrics that they would feel to know that they're on track in this space? Or any sort of key philosophies that they should be working on to do well?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I'd say don't necessarily do it without doing a review by some sort of, I'd say more of a privacy professional, because, shadow IT is going to be exposing. So shadow IT being the fact that maybe junior members of staff just going, I can use this platform. Shadow AI, I can use this platform. I can plug this up here and look at the outputs. And then somebody somewhere else in the country goes, why is my information popped up over here when I knew I shared it with this? So what's the lawsuit happen? So it's make sure there's a review. There's got to be some sort of AI impact assessment, the dreaded data protection impact assessment, which can cover AI. Because what I think the ICO, the regulator, will get to is, well, where are the actual harms? What will that do to people? If you have AI bots that are farming the freely available information that's just been shared by multiple junior individuals who maybe didn't get the training through from GDPR enough to go, I can put this together. I've got a digital twin of someone, and now I'm claiming their social security and benefits on their behalf. And they're phoning up HMRC going, where's my benefits? Or DWP, where's my benefits? And they're like, well, you're claiming it here. We paid it for a year. And they're like, well, no, I'm now destitute and I'm pretty much homeless. You end up with a huge problem.
Yeah.
So, we do need to legislate. We need to be very careful about it. The EU AI Act is, I think, the right way to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's very robust, but it's also pragmatic. And I think what a lot of maybe business leaders maybe mistake is that level of pragmatism through data use and compliant data sharing with AI chatbots or whatever, LLMs or any other type of large models, is the ability you can get far more out of it if you do it in the right way first.
Yeah.
So that upfront, get a bit of professional advice, maybe use a trusted data intermediary service or a data intermediary service provider, a DISP.
Yeah.
That's probably the way to go. And that's probably how it will be managed. So you'll end up getting rid of that multiple hop between service providers and have one.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense to rely on a third party as well, because if your business is doing something totally different to this, the way that the pace of change and the way things are going, it's impossible for you to stay on top of it yourself. Yeah,
you almost need to be the AI expert as well as the CEO and all the other caps you've got to wear when you run your own business. So yeah, I think intermediaries are going to be the way to go. It's not completely prevalent right now, but it will almost be as important as just having your email exchange service provider, providing your email services or web hosting. It's going to be exactly the same.
Yeah. Last couple of questions. The role of the data protection officer, how do you see that kind of evolving over the coming years with all this change in the landscape?
So I think there's a real push for DPOs to become AI experts, AI officers. And there's a really nice marrying of the baseline understanding of what you need coverage of as a DPO. So that's legal, and to be technical enough, and to be able to be articulate enough to speak the two languages. AI just seems to be that's the great add-on I can put on, and then it'll just become bigger, and then you have the full landscape. Whereas I think jumping straight into AI without understanding maybe how to read a legal text, how to interpret kind of maybe all the other EU laws or UK laws and how they intermingle with each other, and then not understanding how basic internet infrastructure works or wide area networks or virtual machines, all that kind of good stuff. If you can't talk that language either, you're going to struggle if you're going to jump straight into AI. So I think DPO ends up becoming far, far more valuable to all organizations. And almost they're the transition into this new sort of intermediary space, believe it or not. That's where I sort of see it going. Will be quick, but I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Lots of my audience are health and safety professionals. And over the years, they've had, quality and environment and mental health and all these other things bolted on and bolted on and bolted on. What would be the risk of doing that with data protection?
The risk of bolting on data protection.
So giving them something else to do. So they're not a specialist in it. It's just another thing that they need to oversee.
Well, I guess in my mind, it's sort of been there for best part of 7-8 years. And, the transition to the EU GDPR and the Data Protection Act of 2018, it should almost be there.
Yep.
But I also know that it's still that headache that is this data protection thing. Nobody's calling me out on it. I think it does need to be a mandatory field that you look after. I mean, we went through the whole data is the new oil. Look after the oil. And then I've heard it, personal data is now like lending money. I'm lending you my data to be able to use it and process it. And I'm basically a service provider, even though it's, seems completely unrelated. The only way my business functions and drives revenues because I'm using personal data. Therefore, you are deriving your own financial gain through using personal data. And if that's being given to you and lent to you to use and make money, surely there should be some sort of oversight of that use. So it's a bit of a no-brainer in my mind. So yes, should be a bolt-on, should be very much in part of that package and not seen as just another burden. It's now part of our world.
Okay. Final question. What would you say would be the 1 to 3 key things to take away as, this is the mindset shift that we should have around data protection and particularly around that whole trust and ethics piece?
Mindset shift.
Yeah. So what should how should people act? How should they think about this? How should they go away and respond to what's going on?
It's a tough question, especially being so personally embedded into that space because my mind's already shifted and it's been there for a long while. I'm like,
in the weeds,
how do I take a step back and go like, well, what do you need to do? So I guess what I take from your question is maybe there's not that complete, it's not part of that bolt-on package. Like, oh, we have to have that. It's just one of those tick boxy things. Fine, but do it right. What should you take away? Well, you are using personal data if you send an email. That's it. Take that away and go like, oh, I need to look after that.
Yeah, so pretty much everything we're doing.
Everything you're doing, actually there's this angle in there. And I still speak to individuals in all sizes of business where like, well, we don't process personal data because that's not what we do. We do plumbing or we walk cats or dogs. But, this is not in their mind. It's like, well, we don't process personal data. It's like, well, you absolutely 100% do. Yourself, for one, maybe an employee, your customer data, your supplier data, your or the people you work with to provision your services, your online platforms, your email. So it's all personal data. You're all processing personal data. Can't get away from it.
Yeah.
All there. Why not have a little check? Are you doing it right? Has an email gone a bit awry? And you're like, oh, the IC are going to be all over me. How do I manage that? Just get confidence in it by talking to a professional. But I think there may be the fractional DPO will become more prevalent. Just get yourself one of them and pay £50 a month.
Did you see fractional CMOs and stuff like that already? So,
exactly.
Perfect. Okay. And I know you're starting a new venture soon, so there'll be news on that coming up. But in the meantime, would LinkedIn be a good place for people to follow you and get in touch?
Yeah, that's really nice of you to say. Yeah, absolutely. Follow me on LinkedIn. My absolute passion is sharing data for social good.
Yeah.
How do you do that and then reduce harms coming to children or domestic violence victims or homelessness? Yeah. There are projects out there like building a data archive around homelessness research data. I love that stuff. I post about it every single day.
Yeah.
And so maybe you can get an idea of what I'm kind of moving towards and what I want to set up. But yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. You'll see an announcement maybe next couple of months. Make sure my website is up before I do that full launch. Yeah. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Good stuff. All right, James, thanks very much.
Total pleasure.
Cheers.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk See you next week for another episode.